Welcome back to the European LCS, where Rakan just beat Schalke 04, and the player of the game was Prophet with 42% of the votes. Exactly one of the guys we were looking at to kind of elevate the Rakan lineup.
Different style, though. He was on a tank.
He was on a tank, so they did make something different happen.
They did. Maurice wanted to see late game team fighting. That ended up being fantastic for them, especially against a Schalke team who tends to do very little in the games.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on, but basically from the early to mid game, like Schalke looks great, and then suddenly it just goes.
That was pretty good for my fantasy team
For
as
your
well.
fantasy team, I was going to say we can talk a lot more about what is and isn't working for Schalke later in the EULCS post-game lobby, but on stage right now, we've got Misfits Gaming and G2 Esports gearing up for a rematch of the summer finals. Back then, G2 secured a dominant 3-0 victory, and the reigning champions also came out on top when these two teams met in week 1. It seems that G2 has an edge over Misfits, a mental edge, an edge on the Rift everywhere, really. Do we think that's still the case? And how can Misfits overcome that and beat G2 today?
I think it's a lot about G2, or basically Misfits still being like this discount G2 to a certain extent, where they're relying a lot on Maxlore's pathing and the smartness that he brings, and basically like there's the control in the game that he brings. And if you have worse individual players, which I think still holds true in the 2018 iteration.
Does it hold true more? Does it hold true more?
No, I don't think so, because Mithy and Sven were such a step above everyone else that I think now it's like they're still a step below, but not as much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one of the problems for Misfits last year was they wanted to play the same way G2 played. But G2 had Mithy, who was the best in Europe at playing that kind of style. You know, we call it like by the book, basically, where you don't gamble on big, crazy moments, at least in the EULCS, which is what Misfits try to avoid as well. They want to play slow, they wanted to play correctly. It's the same now, I feel, and because PerkZ have been able to kind of take everything Mithy taught him and teach the new guys on this team, G2 look like the smartest and cleanest team in EULCS at the moment, and they should still have an edge in that department over Misfits.
Well, that's a good point. In week 1, even G2 beat Misfits, but since then, G2 has actually gone through a very big evolution. They are now on a 5-game winning streak, and as you say, they just look clean, and it looks like they still have ways to go, but they're still looking already strong enough to beat everyone in Europe.
Yeah, they don't make dumb mistakes in-game. They don't gamble on 50-50 plays. They read what the enemy team wants to do to get ahead. We especially saw that yesterday in the Vitality game, where they knew that Vitality needed to snowball side lanes. Double TB was ready. PerkZ could always react on a Galio, and it just makes it hard to play against them. I think Misfits, though, can find an advantage by being a little bit more creative in the way they draft, because we have seen Rengar from Maxlore as an example. I think we can get something like that in a game like this one, where Misfits early game could give them an advantage if Maxlore is able to do something.
Yeah, I would love to see an X Factor, because for them, they have always lost with the same style that they try to approach in terms of like playing against G2. And if they just break that chain and suddenly bring something that G2 cannot plan for, I think they can win.
Well, and that's what they showed yesterday. They had the game versus Unicorns of Love, where they brought out the Malphite and they brought the ultimate composition. So they've showed like, hey, we can flex it. We can bring something new. So is that then the route we want to see today? Not specifically Malphite, but something new along those lines.
I think it could be an answer for them, for sure. Because I think in the past, there's been some pick and ban phases where G2 did mess up a little bit and actually gave a chance for the enemy team to have a really good counter pick or a good composition against what G2 already showed. So I think that is a way in. Another option is what we just saw Rocket do and say, listen, get superior late game draft and then see if G2 will not snowball early. It's risky, but it is a choice you can take as Misfits, because you have Hansama.
Yeah.
Who can be the carry.
Yeah, Hansama can definitely be the carry. He has been together with Alphari, the two guys we were looking at. Sencux not always showing up. Maxlore, some up and down, but we do see if it is all working for Misfits, it is good so far.
Yeah.
But is the best Misfits right now good enough to beat how G2 is playing today?
I predicted yes, because I think they actually identified yesterday already this X Factor, and I think they're going to bring it again today.
Well, we'll see. We do have a couple of minutes more before we step into picks and bans.
I thought it was a dramatic ending.
Yeah, I thought so too. And I was also setting it up for that. But no, juked. In reality, we can take some minutes to look at some other lane matchups that you guys are excited for, or Martin?
Well, I was just going to say to the point where Maurice, where he answered here, I think if G2 plays at their best and Misfits play at their best, I think G2 wins. But obviously, if G2 goes in today and they end up getting surprised about something, or Misfits just get an early advantage and then show that clean play they can around Baron, because like, when I casted that game yesterday and they got ahead, watching them step for step perfectly set up a big objective in terms of pushing, control wards, reset, control wards again. Like, it's something Hussein, aka the Moose,
The Moose.
loves. Like, that's his. That's the stuff he likes about League of Legends. And when I watch that happen, then I know he's proud, and I go like, yes, this is exactly what we want to see from Misfits. G2 can do the same thing, but I think the early game could end up being super important here because both teams have shown the ability to cleanly close out games.
And then it will also come down to what Maxlore can do and what Jankos can do, and Jankos has really shown up the last couple of weeks.
Ban the Zach.
Ban the Zach. Do you think that's really as simple as that? Is Jankos
No.
not gonna find any
It's not
OTs
that
anywhere
simple,
else?
but I think Zach for Jankos is too good right now because he can be so aggressive with it in the way he's starting fights. And in the past, Jankos has sometimes struggled in team fighting because he didn't know exactly when to engage or where to be. But Zach, you can always jump in, and if you regret it, ult out.
Yeah, like for him, that has been a struggle in the past, like this late game kind of approach and just like calling the shots and being confident in himself. And I think in this G2 roster, maybe the surroundings are a bit different, but he definitely shows that confidence to actually start fights and engage whenever he wants to.
Yeah, it seems to fit. And then for G2, they obviously have the luxury. Wunder is playing out of his mind. So Jankos could say, you know what, I'll go visit top lane. You know what, I'll go visit mid lane because PerkZ always goes off. If we look at the side of Maxlore, it's a bit of a different dynamic. He might have to babysit Sencux a little bit and not be able to put all his attention on the lane. So that's definitely a discrepancy.
Yeah, those super strong soul laners have been huge for G2. And I mean, Wunder's underrated by everyone, myself
Except
included.
for the statistical breakdown.
Except for the medic breakdown, that's
the
true.
MVP.
But I think, like, looking at him, he's currently playing like a guy who could actually be in the running for most valuable player.
All right, so who wins here today?
I'm going G2.
I'm going to go Misfits.
G2 and one Misfits vote. Well, there's been crazier stuff that's gone on the Rift today, so we'll see what happens. Can Misfits get their revenge on G2? Let's send it over to Pyra and Vedius to find out.
Thank you very much, Sjokz. We'll find out, I suppose. And Misfits, you know, they're definitely trying to find a few answers. They had a couple of losses stacked up. But that answer of an elegant solution, dive the back line.
Elegant?
Nice
No. Malphite? Yes. Wombo combo.
I call
That's
that
what I want to
elegant.
see more.
It's a beautiful
from
poetry
the
in
side of
motion,
Misfits.
Vedius.
Exactly that. I'm looking forward to it, but I think we're ready to announce our rosters.
I think we are indeed. Now the stage is set for this fight between the two summer finalists. On the blue side, we've got the Misfits. Absolutely, we do. Alphari in the top, Maxlore the jungle, Sencux on mid, Hansama the AD carry, and Mikyx support.
Yeah, and you can see a lot of fans excited to see Misfits play, but they're going to have some tough opposition in the form of G2 Esports. The only team right now on a 5-game winning streak. These guys are on fire, and they are looking to make that 6. With Wunder in the top lane, Jankos in the jungle, PerkZ their mid laner, Hjärnan on AD carry, and Wadid on support.
Yeah, these guys are definitely looking hot right now. Certainly not a whole lot to complain about. The G2 that was promised has started to rear its head. And these guys are definitely looking like the team that could defend their 4-time LCS championship title.
Woo! Big claims. They certainly are looking strong. Fnatic looking just as strong, but we got to remember how close these guys are in the standings, Para. A win here for Misfits would actually tie them up with G2, whereas a win for G2 could tie them up for first place.
Yeah, and they beat Vitality, so that puts them in tiebreaker position.
That is very exciting stuff. So let's talk about the pick and ban, because this is going to be very important. I feel like Galio is going to be a big point of contention and already banned off the board from G2. Yesterday, we saw very early prioritization on the Gangplank from G2 Esports. And interestingly enough, we've seen a lot higher priority on the Ezreal for Misfits. So as these pick and bans unfold, let's see where these priorities shift.
A lot of bans, of course, generally thrown in Hansama's direction, and he was a big fan of Kog'Maw, but changes coming in, not giving him a whole lot of chance. G2 are actually the ones that ban out the Gangplank themselves, and that is an insta-lock of the Ryze for Sencux.
Ooh, so this was something that we talked about on the analyst desk yesterday, where we looked at the dream comp, the best case scenario for Misfits. And I think that Ryze is one of the champions that Sencux can perform the best on. Statistically, it is one of his lesser performing champions, but in terms of its role, its ability to roam around the map and go even and hold his own in the vast majority of matchups, I think it fits his style, and it's something that Misfits need him to be, which is consistent, especially against the powerhouse that is PerkZ in the middle lane.
Now, you want to talk about fitting styles. Jankos gets that quick lock-in on the Jarvan, and Hjärnan gets his chance to go at bat with the Tristana, so that's a bit of a takeaway from Hansama, but already kind of drafting to those strengths, hyper-carrying for the late game, but Jankos already looking to try and get those engage on with the jungler now. Alphari is going to lock in on the Gnar. What's the next pick going to be? Do they pick an AD carry for Hansama here or risk more bans being thrown his way?
Now, again, we have seen a high focus on early champions like the Ezreal for the side of Hansama. He's not afraid to pick that also into the Tristana. It would fit with this kind of mid-game style that they're going for, and given that Misfits are drafting for a 1-3-1, you can put the Ezreal in the middle lane, and it becomes very difficult to gank him as well. So I feel it would fit into this comp that they're drafting, but very interesting that Maxlore would choose to go for the Kha'zix. We haven't seen a Kha'zix now for a little while. He kind of fell out of favor, given more priority on things like the Zac, the Jarvan, the tanky junglers, but Kha'zix has always been known to be a great duelist into the Jarvan. In early skirmishes, Kha'zix always has the edge.
Very true. In fact, he does. PerkZ having a little bit of fun with the crowd. He flashes on the Yasuo before locking in Ornn for Wunder. So there's a nice, comfortable, that's okay if I get pushed in, I'm still going to be good in those team fights. So G2 definitely drafting around more of that engage once again.
Feel like you got to remember that this Ornn can be flexed to support as well.
That's true.
Right now, by it being locked in, it offers a safe matchup for Wunder to go into the Gnar up in the top lane. And I think that what they have the ability to do is, if Misfits choose to not ban top laners right now, then they could even flex it to support and give Wunder something else like the Jace. Something you've always got to remember that is a very effective counter to the Gnar up in the top lane.
Yeah, puts a little pressure on the Misfits side. Let's see what the Moose can come up with. Reading from his notebook here, and the Ezreal banned away. So by not taking it earlier on, Hansama might have to dip deeper into the champion pool.
Braum also going to be picked up. We've seen how effective it can be into the Ornn, mitigating his engage potential. Definitely a worthy ban there from G2, and they clearly see the value that Misfits have put on Ezreal as well. Misfits likely to round out their ban phase with something like an Xayah, take perks off something that he's shown a lot of proficiency on.
A few more seconds remaining. They've already banned the Victor. Got some changes a bit back, and now it's an Alistair banned away. So banking on the fact that that will be an Ornn top.
So we'll see right now for G2. I feel like that the safest thing to do would be to lock in a mid. Xayah very safe, fits with the comp, gives you good sieging, fits in nicely with the team fight that G2 have already drafted themselves. The big issue is you can't really send a Xayah off onto a side lane. But it looks like instead they're going to try and hold it off for as long as possible. We'll confirm that this Ornn is up in the top lane.
Want to get that counter pick on the mid. PerkZ wants to have every advantage in the lane kingdom. Misfits, last couple picks for them. Where's the AD carry going to go for Hansama, first of all?
Looking at some of the AD carries that he has played so far this split, he's played a lot of Kog'Maw after the nerfs, and against this kind of comp, I would be hesitant to pick that champion up. He kind of wants mobility, so Xayah
and Rakan
would be the option for me, and unfortunately he locks it in just before I get to say it.
Still counts, Vedius, it's okay. So they got lovers in the bot lane. Already had their mid locked in for Sencux, of course, and now for G2, the last question to answer is what's the mid lane going to be?
Now, if they lock in the Zoe, this is one of the big comfort picks for PerkZ. He has had some phenomenal performances on this champion. You remember the bout that he had with Nukeduck, where they were constantly going back and forth. High skill champions in Zoe and LeBlanc. We've seen what he's done against Splice, where he single-handedly won that game through his performance on that champion. This guy is more than happy to pick up the Zoe, and I'm expecting nothing but a fantastic performance when he gets it.
Looking at this composition from G2, very scary, not just with the comfort for PerkZ. Hjärnan's got some late game scaling, Jankos on the engage. They've got two beefy tanks. Seems like a very balanced G2 composition, Vedius.
Well, I was a little concerned in terms of what Zoe really offers in team fights, because she's much more about poke and pick, but it facilitates the siege extremely well, and you can send her off onto a side lane. You have to be a little careful, but at the very least, if they get an early advantage, she will be able to hold off that Ryze and make sure he's not creating terror. But in terms of early game, Misfits, this is what this comp is all about. You've drafted strong laners across the board. You've got a jungler that's all about early skirmishing and finding those leads during the first 15 minutes of the game. Misfits, they're going to try and get that early edge. They're going to try and snowball. And against G2, this is a big statement to make. Can they do it? Can they shift away from this late game style that they found a lot of their wins with? And can they shut down G2 in the early game, which is a team that are right now fighting for that top spot in Europe?
Well, shutting down that win streak on any given day would be a huge thing for Misfits, but to then tie G2 in the standings would be even better for a team that has had some trouble finding their footing. Will they be able to fire off a win here and take down Kings of Europe? We will find out as we load up onto Summoner's Rift once again.
So we talk a lot about these matchups, Pyra. In the bottom lane, Xayah, Rakan, really aggressive. They're all about getting a lot of lane advantages. Against the Tristana Taric, I can definitely see how effective it can be. But you've got to remember the buffer that you have on that jump from Trist means that it can sometimes be difficult to lock her down when you're going for those all-in plays. Taric, though, is a little easier to lock down. That stun is very linear. With the mobility that these two champions have, you can very easily play around it. And I would not be surprised to see Maxlore and Sencux look for plays towards the bottom side of the map. And let's not forget, the last time these two teams fed off, right at the beginning of the split, it was Hansama and Mikyx drafting the Xayah Rakan. They had the Galio in the mid lane. Maxlore was on the Lee Sin. All they tried to do was camp bot, and G2 answered every single time. Have Misfits grown from that last time? Or are they still going to suffer to the same kind of counterplay that G2 were able to bring?
We'll certainly find out not too long from now, but you know, PerkZ, he can go roaming as well if he wants to try and give some backup. Wunder on the spellbook starting off with the Ignite, but he can swap it out for that teleport whenever he'd like. In the dual lane matchup too, just pound for pound 2v2. Hansam and Mikyx have definitely had the better of the split so far compared to Hjärnan and Wadid.
That's very true, but in this early laning phase, we've got to take note of where the junglers are starting, because early leashes can contribute pretty significantly to early tempo in terms of being able to get the push. The fact that Jankos decided to start towards the top side means that Wunder will get later into the lane, which means Alphari already gets an early push off. He gets forced underneath the tower, and he'll start losing a lot more farm than he typically would like to. However, in the bottom, the fact that Hjärnan and Wadid get to the lane first means that they won't get cheesed by the early level 2 of the Xayah Rakan, and it mitigates some of that early laning power that Hansama and Mikyx wanted to try and take advantage of.
It's very important, especially with as potent of damage they're already going to have. Ignite early on.
So they said,
able to walk
forget
away.
the level 2 play, we're going for the all-in level 1.
Nobody expects it.
Big surprise there. Now let's see who can get that level 2.
All right, it's going to be Mikyx and Hansama, but immediately answered. No real difference in experience there, but do expect a lot more skirmishes to be happening. Alphari taking advantage of his push position to go and throw down a ward just in case Jankos wants to take a trip up towards the top side anytime soon. I'm checking on the mid lane as well. Sencux on this Ryze. It's been a staple pick for a lot of European mid laners, but Sencux has definitely preferred the likes of some pretty mobile mid laners overall. And of course, once that Realm Warp becomes available to him, he can do what he likes to do best and help make plays everywhere but the mid. Another hop in, but Hjärnan's already buffered his hop away.
You can see the amount of harassment that Hjärnan is currently taking in the lane. Jankos will jump over the wall and will be spotted out by this ward, so Maxlore will have that information available to him. Deciding to go towards the early Scuttlecrap in the top side. And Alphari actually being pushed under his turret right now. That is due to the fact that the minion wave hit Wunder's turret early on. It's always exciting to watch these two top laners battle out. Wunder, statistically one of the best early game performing top laners, and Alphari, not really known for his laning prowess so far this split, but he's hold his own, primarily going for champions like the Gangplank, where he's had way more value in these later game fights.
Yeah. Of course, you know, back in the first split that Misfits did enter the EU LCS, laning was definitely one of big strengths for Alphari. Comparatively, he would always shut down laners. Maybe we see a little bit more of that starting to come in later on. It's going to be hard to do against the likes of Wunder, though, for sure. Where are Hansam and Mikyx going right now? Trying to get a little bit of vision down. Then goes towards the bottom side of the jungle. Blast Cone popped preemptively. They're trying to play it as safe as they can.
Yep, and we've got to keep our eyes on what Maxlore looks to do. Right now, his focus is on the farm. Not too surprising for a Kha'zix. Remember that he will scale well, likely building towards high damage, but there's always this risk of Kha'zix you have to be careful of. He will be squishy as a bit more trading happens down in the bottom lane.
Oh, Maxlore and Jankos can spot each other out not too far from there as well. Here's the hop over, trying to get a little extra damage onto Jankos, goes right into his jungle. All right, Dragon Strike, Jankos turns a little bit of damage onto the bug, but Maxlore gets the better of that trade right now, and he's going to therefore own this side of the river.
And this is exactly what we were talking about in the draft. The great thing about Kha'zix is his early ability to win out on these trades and skirmishes against a Jarvan. So he's not afraid to move into the enemy jungle and look for these small fights, especially when you have so many pushing lanes all across the board. A lot of confidence coming out from Maxlore, but also intelligent confidence. He's using the pressure that he does have available to him.
Yeah, difference between confidence and cockiness for sure. Getting away a few of these camps to try and keep Jankos down. Did mention that he's going to be making most of these big plays prior to the 15-minute mark. Does he need to really make a whole lot of visits to these lanes, though? It's kind of hard when they're all pushed in.
That's very true, and it's very much revolving around that level 6 mark for both mid and jungle for the side of Misfits. Once you have the ultimate available on the Ryze, that's when it becomes much easier to look for these bot roams, especially if they can find successful trades like this. Misfits looking to put a lot of pressure down, and all we're waiting for is those crucial level ups.
Taking advantage of those low cooldowns on the Ignite. Mikyx not afraid to pop it immediately. Double teleports back up towards the top side. They're both out of the game. We're getting closer and closer to that level 6 mark for sure. But I think I want to talk about the mid lane matchup, to be honest. It's been a little bit quieter right now. But PerkZ, honestly, is generally speaking on a very different level than what Sencux has shown so far this split.
Yeah, you just look at some of the statistics for PerkZ. He is one of the best performing mid laners in Europe right now. His laning is fantastic. His damage contribution to the team is also fantastic. And KDA, yes, it suffers a little bit. But considering the amount of plays that this guy makes, I think you can forgive him for being 4th place in that department. You look across the board and Sencux, he really is one of the worst performing laning mid laners that we have in Europe. 10th in terms of CSD, 10th in terms of damage percentage, and we heard from the support staff of Misfits that this guy was going to be an upgrade. He had a deeper champion pool. He had a greater willingness to grow in terms of development. He was a little more standard in terms of what he brought to the table. But in terms of lane prowess, it's difficult to argue that he brings more than what Power of Evil did. One of the core identities that Misfits did have was that Power of Evil was that big carry. We were still looking for that second carry throughout the regular season. And right now, all we can do is, or Misfits fans rather, have to rely on the process and hope that Sencux will find his form, find his place. But you have to imagine that against a powerhouse like PerkZ, is he going to really be able to find it today?
Yeah, I mean, that's the real question, right? Because Sencux, it's interesting what you talk about, the support staff saying, oh, you know, he's looking to grow, he plays like a lot more standard. To me, whatever I think of Sencux is always like, he wants to make these roaming plays and play these different things like Aurelia and Soul and stuff. He's on the rise, he can definitely make some roaming plays. It looks like teams are roaming to him now. Maxlore and Mikyx looking to come in. Oh! Trying to catch up the route onto PerkZ. He's gone golden, flashing away. Let's see if they got the damage, tasting their fear. That's a flash burn, though. Nice play by PerkZ to get out of the 1v3.
Excellent response there from PerkZ. Invisibility from Maxlore combined with the root from Sencux. PerkZ recognizes the situation that he's in. Instant stopwatch. Wasn't expecting Misfits to look for a play into the middle lane. They want to try and shut down the strong point of G2. But he's able to get away with his life.
Yeah. Burns a stopwatch, burns a flash. He's going to have backup a little sooner, of course, thanks to the unsealed spellbook on his side. And now this is going to give a chance for maybe G2 to get back some pressure. Jankos actually dodging out some vision. He'll be spotted on that ward. However, Sun's coming in. Onsama, Mikyx, they're going to have to get out of dodge. Hjärnan hopping back. He's got his ultimate. Doesn't want to use it, though. Didn't quite find the angle to try and get it back, but Maxlore turning it around once again. And it looks like Sencux is coming to the party as well, looking for Hjärnan. Immediately, he flashes out. However, we're going to have first blood here. It goes the way of Mickey as Jankos giving his life. Try and keep Hjärnan safe.
You gotta criticize G2 for trying to make that gank happen down in the bottom lane. They just saw PerkZ go back to base and being forced out of lane. This meant that Sencux was always gonna have priority on roaming down to the bot side, especially when he has ult, and now Maxlore, not able to find the pick. Could this be his death?
Oh, it is! Hello, PerkZ turning around. Now, can he get out? That was one magic trick. Will he be able to do another? Not today. Sencux gets revenge.
PerkZ demonstrating some of the capabilities he has on this champion, recognizing, oh, Maxlore, you made a big mistake. You should not be engaging upon me. And he's able to get his team a return kill and their first on the scoreboard.
Also, for anybody who was worried about the state of Zoe after some nerfs, still pretty good.
Still feels like she's pretty strong. So Jankos in full vision works towards bot side, trying to set up the gank. But look in the river. They're already moving down. Zoe cannot get to this any faster than what Ryze is able to do. You add to the fact that he has the Realm Walk, and it's just, this was a poor decision from G2. They didn't need to try and force this play, and they did not respect the ability of Misfits to get the collapse down towards the bot side.
A lot of mobility, and again, it's what Sencux does best, to try and make plays on other lanes. Now, here's what turns back around, Sleepy Trouble Bubble, and PerkZ is like, wait a minute, you're dead.
Squishy Jungler also gets hit by the sleep. Surprising amount of damage from Zoe in the early game, but fortunately for Misfits, Sencux is able to get the return kill.
All right, Forge God was called, but Alphari's already walking out. Looks like with the swap up, G2 are leaving Wunder in here, and they want to accelerate this game, getting first tower blood. See if they're able to do it.
Keep your eyes on what the junglers decide to do, because by G2 making this map movement, oh, we don't have time, they're actually going for a bit of a skirmish.
Yeah, level advantage on Maxlore is going to force Jankos out. Bubble comes as well, and now Misfits are actually going to be able to secure the first tower blood thanks to the damage they've already dealt up towards it, but G2 aren't too far behind.
Now, what I would have expected from Maxlore was to actually go towards the bot side so they could get themselves the Infernal. It may cost them the Rift Herald, but securing that objective could provide a lot of benefit in these later stage fights where, remember, Misfits want to try and keep the snowball going, and in fact, that's what they're going to go for right now.
All right, Maxlore taking advantage of this damage to try start off that Infernal Drake. So dust has settled a little bit from a couple early game skirmishes. We're 2-1 right now. It's Misfits with the gold advantage, looking to make it a dragon advantage as well. Maxlore should be able to solo this one out pretty easily. Not going to be spotted, of course, by the likes of G2. A lot of vision invested by the Misfits around this pit as well.
Oh yeah, a lot of control wards on the bottom side of the map. Some of them will get spotted out by G2, but Misfits so far taking advantage of their early game composition, already better compared to what they were able to do in their very first game of the split, where G2 always had an answer.
You asked about the growth of this team, I remember, and it's kind of evident right now that this is the difference between what happened in week number 1. They're already starting to hold their own a little more against this G2 squad, and arguably a G2 squad that's also grown quite a bit.
But now the hard part comes to Misfits, because you look at the scaling from G2 and you recognize they're definitely going to have the edge when you get to the late game. So Misfits, they need to keep the pressure up. You can't afford to slow down now. With your stronger early game, with the stronger laners that you've drafted for yourself, you need to still look for these outer towers, start setting up towards the Baron, start forcing those kind of fights at the point in the game where you're stronger. One misstep, just like we saw from Schalke, can stall out long enough for G2 to reach those big 3-item spikes and then start winning these fights later on.
Yep, so far only sitting on 1 or a little bit less. So we're still only 12 minutes into this one. Of course, the kill that PerkZ got helped him buy that Morellonomicon too, so he's not going to be too shy for damage. We've already seen what Zoe can do with only half completed items.
Merc Treads being picked up from Sencux. Anyone at home would highly recommend getting Merc Treads against Zoe. The extra tenacity is insanely valuable.
Especially now that it applies to sleep.
Also that, yes. And also, if you are running the precision tree at all, grab the tenacity one, because it really helps. Like, it is really helpful. So, now we need to move back to what the junglers are doing. Jankos hasn't been that active in the early game. The one play that he did make ended up backfiring horribly. Whereas Maxlore is focusing on the vision towards the top side, but it's still G2 that have main control over that area.
Maxlore still sniffing through this jungle, see if he can find anybody, maybe looking for Jankos, but Jankos is already back. Instead, he just goes ahead and throws a couple wards down, trying to keep eyes. Once again, hard to gank these lanes. They've been pushed a little bit, but what's pretty easy to gank is the Rift Herald.
Yeah, the pathing that Maxlore took, though, mean that he won't actually be spotted, because he used his ultimate to path through the river through where G2 had no control wards. He then came over the back of the wall using the blast cone, which means that in theory G2 should not actually be able to see what is going on. And given that no one else has come over to help him out, Maxlore should be able to secure this objective for free.
Jankos. Oh, he doesn't get it! Oh no! That's what you call unlucky.
Yeah, indeed. No awareness there from Jankos, and a free objective coming out from Misfits. This will make sieging on the middle lane that much easier, especially against the Zoe, who always has that threat of landing the Sleepy Trouble bubble and then forcing you back after getting slapped in the face.
Nice play by Misfits jungler. Sneaking it out. Okay, teleport coming in. PerkZ utilizing his Spell Thief to get back to lane a little bit faster. Sencux a little low on the mana department right now, and he is pushed up. Jankos looking to come around the side. Maybe get a counter jungle of his own, however. Enhanced recall. Maxlore's already out.
Nothing for him to take. Maxlore, his pathing this game has been pretty strong. Decided to go for Boots of Mobility, trying to take advantage of the invisibility that he gets from his ultimate once it's upgraded, and just utilizing the fact that he can then stealth his way through the jungle and get a lot of deep wards down. So I like this innovation here from Maxlore.
That's a fast bug for sure. Get those clears on nice and early, but you know, talked about in draft, the 15-minute mark is kind of when the tables start to turn a little bit in favor of Jankos, who hasn't had as much action in the early game. G2, we know, are looking for that scaling, later game style of play. Has Maxlore really done enough as we crest that 15-minute mark?
Well, I think that given they've taken the bot tower and they have the Rift Herald, they're set up to continue making plays, but it's now about the execution of said plays from this point on. Mikyx and Maxlore will be grouping up a lot more to ascertain much more deep vision. It looks like they're still playing towards the bot side. Rather than go towards the tier 1 tower on the top, their eyes are on securing away this blue buff and setting up for the Infernal Drake that's going to be spawning in about 2 minutes time.
Yeah, we really have seen a lot of play around the bottom side for the teams right now. It's less about the mid, even though a few attempts were made to try and shut PerkZ down. Recognizing that threat. Ooh, Sencux does get the root on. See if he has the damage. That Machine Gun Ryze starting to come online. Of course, doesn't quite have the damage yet. So he opted for that Abyssal Mask first to keep himself nice and tanky.
Good punish there, though, from Sencux. PerkZ messed up his Paddle Star just a little bit. Allowed Sencux to just walk up, root him down, take half his health away. Misfits will successfully take away that blue buff. Now I want to see them utilize this Rift Herald. Where will they look to put it? I imagine the mid lane, given that it will be the hardest lane for them to secure. But it looks like he still has about 1 minute and 30 seconds left on it. So he's got to look to make that play soon. What I imagine, they group up mid, they use the Rift Herald, take tower, then with pushing mid while PerkZ looks to catch the wave, they then rotate down to Drake as it's spawning in about 45 seconds. And then they'll be able to secure themselves all the objectives that they could want.
Sounds like a foolproof plan to me, Vedius. We'll see if they end up doing it.
Here are the pings coming down. Bot lane's already been pushed up from the side of Misfits. And Maxlore, he's setting up deep vision towards the top side of the map to keep an eye on whether or not Wunder will look to roam down.
Ooh. Not going to be able to stop the Rift Herald being popped, but he does go to sleep for a few seconds. Shelly wanted to have a nap before she knocks down the tower. And here come the rest of Misfits, stage 1 of the plan. And G2 know there is no way to contest this one, so down it will fall. Tower number 2 over to Misfits. Next phase, clear out some vision. Step down towards the dragon, spawning in 10 seconds.
Exactly that, Pyra. By the book is Misfits. This is what we heard the analysts talking about, and why they were often considered the discount G2, the team that always tried to play it by the book, but could never quite do it as well as the former G2 squad.
They're the margarine to G2's butter. It's pretty much the same thing, it's just a little aftertaste.
Exactly that, but right now G2 are looking to answer. They don't want to give this Infernal up for free. Both top laners have roamed down. I'm looking forward to a fight right now, Pyra.
Looks like it. G2 trying to make their escape. Oh, nice! Quickness going in, and they're going to try to melt through those health bars. Jankos starts out with a pick onto the bug, but Taric ultimate comes in a little bit too late. PerkZ is going to pick up one. Now Hansama running for his life. G2 got the better of that fight in spades, and they will claim the spoils of war. This time it's an Infernal Dragon.
That fight went so quickly, Pyra. I thought PerkZ had just been blown up right from the start, but he was actually able to flash out, and it was Maxlore and Mikyx that ended up dying in that exchange. So let's get a slow-mo of exactly what PerkZ was able to do in this situation, because I thought that he was for sure dead. Misfits come for the collapse, instant engage, and then he's just quickly able to flash out, and then he gets the Taric ultimate. All the while, they were focusing down this very squishy target in the form of the Kha'zix on the front line, and then given that Mikyx had no way to get out of that situation, they could cleanly pick themselves up a second kill. G2 coming out ahead in that last fight.
Yeah, nicely played. The equalize on the Dragon, and, you know, talk about that scaling. Well, if you're able to do this in the phase of the mid game, it's already looking great for G2. They can just keep this going.
And let's not forget, Pyra, we talked about how execution of these early to mid game comps is so important, because if you make too many misplays, you get slowed down, and that buys time for your opposition to build up these crucial items that they are so reliant on. That's what makes them the late game threats. It is those power spikes. And already you start to see a couple of crucial items being picked up for the side of G2.
Yeah, we're halfway there on some of the big carries. PerkZ sitting on a couple of pieces to try and get himself forward. The Tristana, just the static shiv, but halfway towards an Infinity Edge as well. So Misfits are going to have their work cut out for him to try and push this one back.
And it's obviously not over yet for Misfits. They had a bit of a bad fight earlier on, but they still have the pressure advantage. You can see 2,000 and a bit gold in their favor. They're going to extend that even more by securing this top lane tower. And the next big objectives becomes Baron. 15 to 25 minutes is where it's going to be crucial for Misfits to not make any big misplays.
Featherstorm, well, looks like that might have been misplay number 1. Mikyx trying to turn it around into something here. Featherstorm, the knockback. G2 are not going to be able to find anything else. PerkZ tried to get one last parting shot in. Nothing doing. Misfits just didn't have the damage to take out top turret.
So G2 stall for now, but look at the position that Sencux and Maxlore are in. Oh,
Ryze is going to sleep. Let's see if G2 are going to do something about it. Another paddle star. Going nowhere.
That one's just going to deflate. Baron does spawn as well, but G2, they are not done yet. They want to get the collapse on the Sencux.
Uh-oh.
Oh, you missed.
Oh no, Sencux, he almost got out for a second. Couldn't quite make it happen. That cleanse.
Just a little bit too early. The sleep did not last as long because once you use the cleanse, follow-up CC does get reduced in terms of its duration. But unfortunately for Misfits, they split apart. Sencux, he had no choice. Look, you can see here, he cleanses the knockup rather than the sleep. He has the Merc Treads and the cleanse to help, but unfortunately for him, the chase was likely going to kill him anyway. So another advantage gained for G2, and look at that gold gap. Just a few seconds ago, it was 2,000 Pyra. Now all of a sudden, that's been reduced to only 1K.
Yeah, so Misfits find themselves in a little bit of a harder spot than they were earlier on in this game, and time's starting to run out. I don't know if Sencux would know that, though, of course. With the way Ryze has been changed these days, he's not keeping too much track of time. But it's a little unfortunate. G2, there's a reason these guys have the all-time head-to-head, though. Every iteration of them. Remember, we saw at the beginning the all-time 11-4. 6 of the last times they've met, and that includes the summer finals, by the way. That's been G2's to own.
Yes, it has.
It's definitely on the other side of that matchup.
Misfits have struggled for the last year to really prove their superiority over the reigning kings of G2. And so far in this early game, Misfits have demonstrated some positive things, but they've made a couple of individual missteps here and there, and G2 have been able to successfully punish. The Baron is now alive. There will be a third Infernal Drake on the board that both teams will be more than happy to grab for themselves. But with this control being set up around the objective, again, G2's goal is to stall. Remember, they're waiting for those big item spikes. They don't want to try and force that many fights right now. If they can find a couple picks here and there, that's great for Zoe. But it's more about the late games, more about the 30 to 35 minute onwards mark for this G2 squad. And the pressure's on Misfits. Can they make these plays happen? Can they find the fights?
They've tried it a couple of times, even with the early game advantages they'd built for themselves. G2 were able to force them back more often than not. This is troubling for Misfits right now that they just can't quite find the picks they're looking for. However, while G2 have backed away, this gives them a chance to try and clear out some of this vision around the Baron pit. It's only going to be a momentary lapse, though. Misfits still thick around this pit, this jungle, trying to clear away the vision, but G2 are coming back.
A lot of communication going on stage right now. G2, a lot of the pings coming down, trying to spot out where Maxlore is. Keeping the team updated. You've got to remember, with the mobility and stealth that he does have, Maxlore is a very scary threat. Yet to complete his first item, though, which you would imagine is the Duskblade of Drakthar, to give him that extra bit of burst, still will be very squishy, though. Very much what you would expect of the Kha'zix, but he has struggled to really have that great early game. Really just getting blown up in a lot of these fights.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. Misfits, I think you said it right, needing to find some of those picks, and whether it's onto PerkZ or Hjärnan, that's exactly what they need, but it's so hard to do, especially the way Wadid is playing these Cosmic Radiances as well. When the fights are actually on, that's starting to turn the difference. We saw it earlier when they tried to engage the choke point of the jungle. And now, kind of leaving an opening here in the mid. G2, the Wrecking Crew just comes through.
G2 secure a very easy tower in the middle lane. Misfits were not in a position to defend it, and now G2 will have priority around the dragon. At this point in the game, I think they'd be pretty happy to take a fight. But let's see what are Misfits looking to do. They are around the Baron, but no, they're not going to force it down. Free objective going in the favor of G2, and now the game starts to look like it's going in the favor of the reigning champions. They seem to have so much more control over the game. Misfits, they seem a little hesitant to force that many plays.
Yeah, just trying to grab what they can out of the G2 jungle, but hesitant to pull the trigger. Try and go for the big play because they know G2's pulling ahead. But the problem is, they got scaling on their side too, so what can you do? Duskblade finish from Maxlore. See if he can try to get a pick off onto somebody. Here we go, quickness, they're gonna find two. Let's see if they get the damage out. Jankos going hopping, the Taric ultimate comes out. Now they know they can't take the fight any further, so they hop the wall. Baron gets procced though by the explosive shot of Hjärnan.
Maxlore loses the vast majority of his HP to the Baron. No summoner spells were actually used, only a trade of ultis between supports. Another great setup for G2. Again, still just trying to stall this game out. Misfits starting to feel the pressure. They try to find that pick that we just talked about, Pyra, unable once again to do so. And now we're starting to look a little more like what we saw the first time these two teams met, where Misfits, they drafted more towards the early game. Last time they struggled to get these early leads. This time round, they successfully did it. But then they made these couple of individual misplays, which G2 so effectively punished. And we're transitioning to that state in the game where Misfits, they're going to have to take a couple of gambles. They're going to have to take risks if they want to take advantage of this comp. They still have the 1-3-1. There's still a lot of disengage available to them. With the things like the Xayah, her ulti, very difficult to catch her out in the middle lane. But this G2 squad is still very scary. The Zoe, so very strong. Let's see how Misfits will look to answer.
I wonder if Sencux can really step up on this Ryze right now. He's definitely going to have some strength for himself, but he's still trying to stack up, building up that tier. Has the needlessly large rod, in addition to his other completed items. If he's on that side lane, that could be scary, but there is a teleport coming in. Alphari in Gnar form, excuse me, it was going to be Mikyx all along, and now let's see if the counter engage comes through. Wadid does not get melted through, but Maxlore does in fact. Jankos flashing away. Misfits just don't have the damage they need to finish the fights, and Sencux is gonna fall, courtesy of Hjärnan. It all goes wrong again for the Misfits.
A huge team fight once more, going in the favor of G2, but I don't think they're done just yet, Pyra.
Featherstorm for Hansama, but he's got Wunder and Hjärnan at his back. The knockup from Mikyx, and he's just out of there, just like that. Wunder's still coming in, looking to chase him down, and Misfits, they are running out of ground. G2 clear away 2, and now it's time for the Baron.
Fantastic fight once again for G2. It was Misfits that felt the need to try and force something. The double TP coming from Alphari and Mikyx unfortunately fails. PerkZ once again playing phenomenally on the Zoe, gets so much damage down onto those primary targets, allows G2 to get the turnaround and will secure themselves the big purple world.
All right, well, they've got the scaling, they've got the dragons, they've got 3.5 minutes on the Baron buff, and they got this fight. Let's take a look at how it started.
So G2, they're looking for a pick around the Baron area, and that's when Misfits decide to try and force the play. The sleep here comes down onto Mikyx rather than Alphari, which means he can still throw the damage out, but they can't burst Wadid down. This is a 4 versus 5, and it's Maxlore that dies before Hjärnan even arrives. Sencux isn't in a position anymore to deal damage. He ends up dropping, and G2, they just continue on with the chase.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. Misfits, you can see these attempts almost working for them, but they just barely don't have the damage, and well, we know how that one all ended, so we'll see what G2 end up doing with their last 3 minutes of the Baron buff. Maxlore trying to hold the wave down on the bottom, but Wunder's up on the top with it. Everybody has the Baron on the side of G2.
Misfits, it's going to be tough for them now, because all game we've talked about this scaling, and now, oh, G2, they're just going for a fight.
They are indeed. Let's see, Jankos though, he's going a little bit low as well. Maybe they can find this here. Hansama already finds the jungler. Cosmic Radiance comes in, that resets the fight for just a few seconds. Alphari, though, is about to go Mega. Maxlore, he looks around the side, doesn't find anything. So G2, itchy trigger finger, they lose a Baron buff.
So what we've identified, Pyra, is that if you initiate the fight, you're going to lose. Because every time Misfits have done it, they failed. And the one time Jankos decides to engage, he ends up dropping down to Hansama. This will stall out for Misfits just a little bit, but G2, they still secure themselves a tower.
Just barely. It's not actually fallen just yet. However, let's see if they can force the fight. Around the side comes Maxlore looking for Hjärnan. Can he get the pick off onto the AD carry? They've already found Mikyx though. PerkZ deletes him. And PerkZ and Hjärnan, just the 2 carries alone, are taking the fight to Misfits. A double kill from PerkZ. This guy is a madman. It takes the rest of the team to take him down.
Oh my word, PerkZ, he just continues to do it. Shuts down Maxlore once again. Ends up being a 2-for-2 trade overall, and Misfits are gonna struggle to gain anything off the back of that.
You come into Lane Kingdom with your entire team, Vedius, and PerkZ still takes you out. This dude is so good.
Especially on a champion as strong as Zoe. This guy can never afford to be underestimated. This is why so many mid laners show their respect to him. And when you think about this guy who came in 2016, he was a hotshot, he was cocky, he wanted to be the best by just outperforming everyone. He had to be humbled after his first international experience where he really identified, okay, I'm not hot stuff, I'm not as good as I thought I was. And the growth he's made from then to now, PerkZ has really come into his own and really has earned the title of being one of, if not the best mid laner in Europe.
And it's been a very different story for his counterpart throughout the years. Sencux came in the same split on that Splice team. Talk about him in a minute as Alphari getting chased down. Call the Forge God trying to dodge it out. Knocked up by Wunder. Hjärnan coming in for the cleanup duty. And oh, that Gnar can't come soon enough. Hjärnan's going to pick him off. 30 minutes on the clock. We're 9-5. Almost dead even on gold. But G2, they are scaling into that late game.
Misfits starting to lose focus as Alphari ends up burning a flash. even though it resulted in his life. Misfits, they may be able to punish with a tier 2 tower in the top, but look at the rest of G2 in the middle lane.
It doesn't matter if you're 1-3-1 and when everybody else is trying to take down the mid turret and Wunder trying to stop these backs. Hansama and Mikyx looking for the outplay, but the base is already falling to pieces here. No one's at home. Misfits knocking down the front door. Wunder just trying to keep Hansama and Mikyx occupied, I should say. There's the knockup. Maybe they can get a kill on him by pulling back with the Blade Caller. Featherstorm coming out. Wunder still holding on to life here. Hansama finally gets him, but at what cost?
Well, it looks like an inhibitor and a tier 2 tower in the bottom lane. G2 gains so much control over the map, and I think Wunder can say worth after holding off the bottom lane of Misfits.
That just smells like desperation right now. Misfits trying to find any opening they possibly can. They get one down, but they lose so much in their base. A little bit of breathing room, though. Let's see if they can keep the waves cleared in the mid.
We heard from Alphari on the Euphoria podcast how when Misfits fall behind, sometimes the communication can break down. And I feel like we're starting to see examples of that. Individuals trying to step up to be big carries. The team not working as a unit. But it's difficult, you know, this composition was all about getting those early leads and then snowballing it from there. And while they started off strong, G2 punished them for multiple attempts where they tried to force that lead that they had. And now G2, after securing the mid-inhib, yes, the gold is still very close, but it still feels so heavily in favor of this G2 esports squad.
It's part of the problem with trying to play things by the book. If the script gets deviated from, don't always know what you're doing at that point. 32 minutes, we're getting into that point of the game. G2 are setting up a good old death brush, spotted out, courtesy of that ward. But for Misfits, it does seem like they're putting all the eggs right now in the Hansama basket, which is typically what they've been able to do.
But he's not on that hyper late game carry that he's been on so many times before, Pirate. You know, we talked about how Misfits, they're kind of experimenting. They're showing different styles. They want to be able to play multiple different comps during the regular season. As long as they make it to playoffs, that's where they'll look to play their true strength. And again, things look promising, but quite unable to effectively punish this G2 squad as they look to secure themselves another tower, and they're going to do it extremely quickly.
Very clean play out of G2, and let's see what they're able to get any more. Hansama forced to use his Featherstorm. Just try to avoid the Sleepy Trouble bubble. And the rest of G2, 5 members strong, looking to knock down door number 2 up towards the top side. Misfits, this might be one of their final stands. There's a big wave pushing in their favor on the opposite side of the map. But G2 can afford to take all the time in the world. They've got scaling. Baron's coming up in a minute, and they've got the siege on. Let's see, Dazzle trying to push them back here. The tower is already gone. Let's see if they can get the counter engaged. Maxlore looking to go around the side, but that bug has been punished before.
Hansama even forced to use the flash. That's how afraid he was of the engage from G2. Mickey gonna have to dash out of that one, but G2, they secure themselves a tower. Could cost them a tower down in the bottom lane, but I don't think they're too upset about that as they can send Wunder down to catch the wave. He has his TP up as well. What G2 can't afford to do is concede control around this Baron area. He's going to be spawning in about 15 seconds time.
Yep, Misfits going to be stepping into a forest of wards here. G2 will have every bit of vision that they need. Now that tower in the bottom nearly fell down. There was a big wave of minions there, but now Wunder's arrived to try and push the last vestiges of it away. G2, 5-man squad, 4-man squad, I should say, don't want to take this fight just yet. They take the blast cone over the wall, and Misfits get some much-needed vision on the Baron pit, but they're going to have to cover their top lane because there's a lot of minions making their way towards that inhibitor.
And there's no tower there, Pirate. That inhibitor will eventually go down if no one's there to answer it. Misfits just want to try and get some semblance of vision around this Baron so they can at least contest the objective if G2 look to start it. But so far, it has been a game that has been heavily in control of G2 over the last 10 minutes. Misfits immediately rush back towards the Baron. They're going to rely on Sencux to clear out this wave.
He's got his ultimate if he wants to end up joining. This could be one of those big game-ending fights, though, Vedius, if it goes that way.
I feel like it, but you have to give the edge over to G2. Every single fight that has happened this game has heavily gone in the favor of G2.
And you also look at all the checkboxes ticked. You've got those item spikes already in, and then some. The Tristana on 4 items, PerkZ on 3.5, and the tanks are tanky, Vedius. It's all the ingredients you need for a successful game win.
Oh, yes. Yes, they are. But Hansama is always that X factor for Misfits. Now, you did talk about him. We need to bring him up again, even though he's not on the latest of hyper carries. This Xayah is still going to do damage, And this guy's positioning in team fights is something you always have to respect. Now, Hjärnan.
Oh, that's a crit build right there. Maxlore is in trouble right now. Flash and tries for the juke, but he gets stomped on by Jankos. It is a 4v5 for the Misfits. And Alphari wasn't even there. That is going to be press the go button on the Baron.
And that's why Kha'zix kind of fell out of favor for many teams. Doesn't offer that tankiness, doesn't offer the late game value. G2 now setting up for the Baron. Let's see if Misfits can answer.
They've got a lot of damage trying to take it out, but PerkZ around the side looking to get some chunk off of his own. Sleepy Trouble Bubble is dodged. Baron's been peeled away. Sencux has to force the flash, and the Taric ultimate come down. PerkZ around the side. Looking for Hansama. Doesn't find any damage, but the Cosmic Radiance is there. It's faded away. Gnar incoming. Alphari. Let's see if he can find a hop in. G2 didn't get any picks. Aren't going to force this. Aren't going to go any further, or are they? Looks like the Ryze is coming around the side. Alphari taking up a little bit too low, but PerkZ is going to flash and juke away from Sencux. And now they can force this fight on. PerkZ on the front is just melting faces here. Hansama is a feather storm, but he is going down. 3 members killed on Misfits. G2 running for the base.
5 members alive to the 2.
Oh!
I mean, 1 left on Misfits as they have the Nexus in their eyes and are looking to extend their win record over Misfits to 7-0.
G2 Esports not only looking for that, but looking for win number 6 in a row. There's a reason we call these guys the Kings of Europe. 36.5 minutes in and one incredibly decisive fight. PerkZ and G2 Esports flexing their muscles and proving they are dominant in EU.
They now tie up the score with Vitality. They sit atop the standings. Their consistency and growth over the last few weeks continues to bear fruit for this squad. And Misfits, again, they tried something a little different, once again, to the style that has found them success. They didn't go for the late game scaling. They didn't try to win out on these big team fights. Instead, they tried to go for an early game strat. They got the early leads, but then they failed to properly execute.
But they got properly executed, I'll say that much.
Oh yeah, that's...
that like 2-shot from Hjärnan at the end. I mean, you know, you talk about a difficult player of the game mode. I think that between him and PerkZ, that's going to be a hard one to call.
Oh yeah. I mean, Hjärnan had a great game, 5-0-7. PerkZ had a great game. Wunder doing a great job. Like, the only person I can really criticize is Jankos. A couple of poor decisions in the early game. Couple of engages that I didn't fully agree with, but the rest of his team really did step up. And if it's only one person underperforming and just not everyone, and it's all reliant on PerkZ, I definitely think G2 Esports can be very happy with that performance.
Oh yeah. The best thing for Jankos is you don't have to worry about smite steals because the opposite jungler was dead.
It's very true.
So G2 Esports looking clean, looking collected, knowing when they need to pivot, but also drafting very effectively up against this Misfits squad. And in all honesty, there's been a lot of uncertainty about who really is the best team in Europe right now. Well, G2 are certainly putting a huge claim for themselves up at the top of the standings. They own the tiebreaker over Vitality, too.
Yep, so this is definitely a big deal for G2 right now. And we've got Fnatic coming up next against Splice. If they win their game, I have a 3-way tie for first, Pyra.
And the best part is Fnatic and G2 play each other next week.
Oh, man. We have so many exciting games here in Europe and even more to come. The standings have been so up and down. So many teams have been taking games off of so many others. HUK are on the rise. We saw Roccat take out Schalke. And based on Splice yesterday having the fastest game of the split, you can't help but be excited to see what they can bring against Fnatic next.
Everything's so good. You know, we talked about the player of the game, and there's a fight right now for it between PerkZ, Hjärnan, and also Wadid for that player of the game. And you guys are, of course, in charge of the voting, so head over to @LOLesports on Twitter. Give us your favorite. I cannot wait to see who the fans pick.
I feel like people are going to edge towards PerkZ once again.
That Zoe was pretty dirty.
Yeah, his Zoe is just so good. I'm looking forward to when the champion gets nerfed soon to see if he can still have that kind of an impressive performance on it. But regardless, with the tools that he's been given, this man always makes magic happen.
That's very true, but I honestly want to give so much credit to Hjärnan and Wadid for stepping it up. We talked about them maybe struggling versus Hansama, Mikyx. Didn't see that at all this game. That was really good. All right, now coming up next, we've got a fight between Fnatic and Splice to close out the week. We're also going to hear from Wunder, so be sure to stick around. We'll see you in 3.5. Looks like it. G2 trying to make their escape. Oh, nice quickness going in, and they're going to try to melt through those health bars. Jankos starts out with a pick onto the bug, but Taric ultimate comes in a little bit too late. PerkZ is going to pick up one.
They are not done yet. They want to get the collapse on the Sencux.
Oh,
Oh, he missed.
No, Sencux, he almost got out for a second, couldn't quite make it happen. It was going to be Mikyx all along, and now let's see if the counter engage comes through. Wadid does not get melted through, but Maxlore does in fact. Jankos flashing away, Misfits just don't have the damage they need to finish the fights, and Sencux is gonna fall, courtesy of Hjärnan. However, let's see if they can force the fight. Around the side comes Maxlore looking for Hjärnan. Can he get the pick off onto the AD carry? They've already found Mikyx though, PerkZ deletes him, and PerkZ and Hjärnan, just the two carries alone, are taking the fight to Misfits. A double kill from PerkZ! This guy is a madman! The Ryze is coming around the side, Alphari taking up a little bit too low, but PerkZ is gonna flash and juke away from Sencux, and now they can force this fight on. PerkZ on the front. PerkZ and G2 Esports flexing their muscles and proving they are dominant in EU.